We are ready to resume our work session. We are moving on to 2.02. Dr. King?
Members of the board, 2.02 will consist of school board policy review by human resources as well as strategic plan phase 1 progress report update, not necessarily in that order. So I'll defer to Dr. Byrdsong. Okay, policies first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Dr. Robinson, members of the board. Thank you for being here today. We have just a few policies that we would like to bring to your attention this afternoon. Please know that Norfolk Public Schools, the administration, we are not bringing these policies to you for revision because it's something that we decided to do. As you're aware, the Virginia Code has been amended in many places, and so we want to make sure that we adhere to the Virginia Code. And so I will be providing information to you related to the specific code as it relates to our personnel policies. The first personnel policy that we need to discuss would be GBL, which is personnel records. And again, we're updating this policy to reflect an amendment to the Virginia Code 22.1-295.1 and 40.1-228.7. And so I can give you some information about that. I won't read the specific code to you, but basically it says that usually teacher performance indicators are confidential as they are a part of a staff member's personnel file. However, there are instances where we have to provide the information if asked. So if you refer to your red line copy, you can see how the fourth paragraph was added to the policy to note that teacher performance indicators or other data used to judge the performance or quality of a teacher maintained in a teacher's personnel file or otherwise is confidential but may be disclosed pursuant to a court order, which is also noted in the second paragraph, for the purpose of a grievance proceeding involving a teacher or otherwise required by the state or federal law. Nothing in this policy prohibits the release of or limits the availability of non-identifying aggregate teacher performance indicators or other data. So that is the reason that we are asking or recommended that this policy be changed. And again, that is to reflect an amendment to the Virginia Code 22.1-295.1 and 40.128.7.
Policy GBL. Okay, if we decide to pass this, it'll go on the consent agenda next week. Yes.
Okay.
Next.
The next policy I would like to bring to your attention is GCPA, which is noted by VSBA as reduction in professional staff workforce. However, Norfolk Public Schools policy is GCPA, reduction in force policy. We have worked very closely with our city attorney's office, specifically with our deputy city attorney, Mr. Cloud, with looking at this policy and making recommendations to you for revisions. We have a policy and separate regulations. Mr. Cloud suggested that we combine the policy with the regulation, and so we have done so. And so I'd like to bring your attention to the Virginia Code that requires us to look at amending our school board policy. And because it's very short, I will read it to you verbatim. And it's Virginia Code 22.1-304, and I will be reading section G, which states, if a school board implements a reduction in workforce pursuant to this section, such reduction shall not be made solely on the basis of seniority, but must include consideration of, among other things, the performance evaluation of the teachers potentially affected by the reduction in force. And so that was that's why we are here today discussing this policy, because the change with the Virginia Code. Traditionally or historically, our code has been based on seniority only, and now we have to look at performance evaluation as well. And so if you will look at your red line copy, you will see where the additions were made to section 1A through F, we included information related to performance evaluation to specifically define what satisfactory performance looks like and unsatisfactory performance as it relates to teachers, principals, assistant principals, classified staff members, as well as central office staff. And so we also looked at policies of some of the surrounding school districts. We were able to get our hands on Hampton City Schools, Chesapeake, and Portsmouth as well. And so they have already revised their policies to reflect that. And so we did look at some other policies as we worked with Mr. Cloud.
I would like to also add that with this, of course, we wanted to ensure that as we were moving forward to bring the recommendation to the board, that it was inclusive of a process that would be fair and aligned with the needs of the organization. So the net effect of such a policy would include both the seniority as well as the performance. Whereas before, the policies simply related to seniority. And of course, there are some pros and cons to solely having a RIF policy that relates to seniority. One could possibly say that there are pros and cons with having a process that embeds both. However, in my view, the fair and sound way to go about this process really links it to the use of the rubric that controls the whole process as we look at evaluation and assessment, and that is the direction that we've headed in terms of having a rubric process that controls what governs good and effective delivery of services. And so if we were to enter into a RIF process, it would be a combination of the seniority piece as well as the evaluation piece. So just a bit of commentary in reference to that.
Any questions? Yeah, Mr. Jordan. To the extent that student scores are part of the teacher evaluation process, can you describe if that plays a role in this policy, and if so, how? Somebody.
I'd like to address that. Okay. Yes, I would say it certainly plays a role because we will be looking at the overall performance rating on the summative evaluation. And as we have discussed previously, Standard 7, which looks at student academic progress, 40% of a teacher's evaluation is based upon Standard 7. And so we look at SGPs, if available, student growth percentiles, and I know we've talked a little bit about that, 20% if available in the areas of math and reading at the elementary and middle school level, and algebra at the high school level. That could account for 20% of the evaluation, and again, it's on student progress, not overall achievement, but we're looking at how students progress. 10% would be based on academic goal setting, which principals sit down with their teachers, and executive directors may be involved in that process as well. They sit down and they talk about a specific area, and they collaborate and they develop goals together. And so that's 10% of the evaluation. The other 10% would be other measures. And again, Dr. Corbin talked about some of those other measures today. When you look at district benchmark assessments, common formative assessments, and other content area assessments, that could account for 10% as well. So that's a total of 40 for Standard 7. But again, you're looking at not individual ratings on these indicators or standards. You're looking at the overall rating that the teacher has been able to achieve on the summative evaluation.
Right, but so I think I was reading some op-ed piece that a teacher who decided to leave the profession wrote. And one of the concerns, she had students who were high achievers, and the success of her students were always high. And she, I don't know where, it wasn't in Virginia, but it was in some state. But she was being penalized, at least she felt she was being penalized, because she couldn't show growth because the students were already at a certain level. So I'm just trying to get some sense of when you have scenarios like that, or if we try to place, teachers at some of our hard-to-staff schools and for a variety of other factors. I mean, just how we evaluate and make sure that the process is fair, because I can evaluate at one level and you may evaluate at a different level, but at the RIF time, I guess you don't necessarily get to hear, my perspective and your perspective. You get to go by what's on the paper. So I'm just trying to get a good sense of, as a board, how do we ensure integrity and fairness in that process if we were to find ourselves in that type of situation?
For every performance standard, there's a rubric that the principals have to use in evaluating each standard. So it makes it uniform across the district, so that it's less subjective if the rubric is utilized in the manner it's designed to be utilized.
So maybe I'll ask. So I'm sorry, but I yield.
Yes, along that line of the scenario that you just mentioned, it sounds as if that particular teacher was really speaking to the progress piece.
Right.
And I can see where if you are in a quote-unquote high-performing school and students are already at the top tier, then there may be some limitation. There might be some limitation in terms of how much additional progress will be made. That should be considered in the process of the 40% within the rubric. However, the progress piece, Dr. Byrdsong, is one component of the 40% in
Right.
terms of
Multiple measures. It's
right.
Multiple measures.
So that's one piece, and it has to be one component within that 40%, and the other pieces that Dr. Byrdsong described would make up that 40%. In addition to that, there would be another 60% to make up that overall assessment or evaluation of the teacher. All of these, each one of these should have a rubric attached, and it all will rest in the accountability that we have with reviewing to ensure that when evaluations are done, they're done aligned with the rubric as it should be. The other piece I think goes back to what I attempted to explain about the process of the 40%. Progress is one piece, then you have the other items that are there, then the 60% that comes into play in addition to that should address appropriately that particular educator in the classroom in a way that it is not punitive. In addition to then looking at the seniority piece based on the way the policy is written. And to speak to your point, with anything, if there's no appropriate monitoring and accountability around how it's implemented, then you open yourself up to potential problems. So the importance for us is going to be centered around having the policy being a fair policy linked to the law, and also having the items that are necessary so that executive directors that evaluate principals and work with schools, all of these things are written into their locally developed practices in terms of supporting them and training them in a way that it is done and implemented in a way that it should be. Because we are at the point already, as the board knows, where we have to use the 40% in terms of evaluating teachers anyway. So this is another extension of that.
And in addition to that, Mr. Jordan, we have implemented the Talent Ed platform this school year. So the executive directors have access to all of the formal observations conducted by principals, and it's their responsibility to review those evaluations and provide principals with written feedback if there are concerns. In addition, when there's an observation and a teacher doesn't agree with that, he or she may add comments to the evaluation, and all of those comments are also made available in Talent Ed. So for the record, if there is a discrepancy in what the principal saw and what the teacher believes to be accurate, the executive directors can intervene and meet with the principal teacher if necessary, so all of that can be resolved.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to really get a good grasp on, the policy and our practices that we will employ to try to ensure as much fairness as possible, because even as you just described that, we just went through the academic review, and all throughout the academic review, it described we needed to do professional development in this area and professional development in that area, and there was some findings in terms of feedback from, the superiors to their staff. So if we have those types of things that are ongoing, and you happen to be a teacher who happens to be in an alignment where there's still work being done,
Sure.
versus a teacher who just happens not to be in that type of alignment, and then you have some type of rift going on. I'm just trying to get a good sense that we know that as we move forward with this policy, that it's just clear for everybody that's in that pipeline what we're voting on, what we're passing, and how that process will work. I mean, I know we can't get
We
it down to
understand
a
that.
specific
And
science,
again, it's
but-
based on growth and not absolute achievement.
Okay.
It's looking at the growth.
And I'll just remind the board that this is not an option. This is
Oh, yeah, I'm
required
not
by
debating the
state.
policy, it's the
How
local
it's
piece, it's how we
implemented-
implement it.
implementation.
Right.
Sure.
In addition to the classroom teacher piece, which is huge, but it's extremely important because we're not going to move student achievement forward if we don't have our teachers being supported, given the necessities that are appropriate to make that happen. In addition, principals are impacted as well because this whole evaluation process is reflective of that too. So while we're doing this in the classroom, we have to do the same thing with building level leaders and anyone else that falls within this process. And we're going to have to ensure that the same fairness that we utilize while we want to maintain accountability, the same fairness that we utilize within the classroom with the classroom teacher, we're going to have to be just as vigilant with how we do that with building level principals and anyone else that may evaluate a building level principal and beyond too. So, it's a multifaceted process.
And we've offered multiple training sessions throughout the school year, and upon request, we go out to schools to provide that training. And I'm going to ask Dr. Myers-Dobb, who is our official trainer for Talent Ed, I think it was as recent as yesterday, she was at an elementary school providing additional training. You want to talk about that experience?
Sure. Yesterday, I spent the day training. I trained by grade level, and I worked with teachers specifically on Standard 7 and how that's calculated. And one of the questions that came up frequently from each grade level was generally the general educator that was serving in the inclusion classroom and was questioning how that would impact her evaluation. So we spent a lot of time talking about, again, that this is all around growth. So when your students are pre-assessed at the beginning of the year, you're going to have a variety of students that are performing at various levels, and the students with disabilities, if they do perform lower in a specific content area, again, that post-assessment is looking at the growth that they made. And it may be that they didn't meet grade level expectations according to whatever assessment was used, but we're looking at the growth they made from when they came into that classroom until the end of the year. So that question came up consistently with each grade level.
Dr. Stewart?
Thank you. A few questions for Mr. Cloud and then a few questions. These are policies that the VSBA has recommended as possibilities as a result of the General Assembly, right?
Yes.
And you have spoken to other school systems to see what it is they're doing to accommodate for the policy possibilities that VSBA has provided us, right?
Yes.
As we know, the General Assembly each year comes up with new wisdom, and it's the final answer until they change their minds perhaps the next year. So we must do what it is their final wisdom is until they change their mind. So that we are responding to the wisdom of this year, and there may be changes in the future. No how is being recommended in this, as I see it. Is that true?
I'm sorry, no.
I don't see how. I don't see a how recommended, how we're to go about this.
No.
Okay. I'm now going to speak to someone who's young and ask for anyone who's been around for several decades if there's, have we had a RIF policy during your time?
No.
Have we had a RIF policy during anybody's time?
Yes.
Do you remember when that was?
Yes,
Oh,
it was
actually,
actually 3 years ago.
Yeah, I do remember one about
Okay.
3 years ago.
Okay. Again, as Dr. Robinson has pointed out, the Virginia General Assembly has told us we must do something. They did not tell us how to do something, and they may change their mind.
I guess the how is the piece that I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
And so maybe if I could just request, and since you all mentioned the rubric and some other things that are attached to this, can you just share it? You know, share what the rubric is and share some of that is, so it'll just help, at least it'll help me as I, decide.
Sure. Like right now?
No.
Okay. Okay, I was going to grab my
No.
TP.
No.
Yes, there
No.
is a rubric established for each performance standard. And so
Right.
the principals are using that as they evaluate teachers in those specific areas.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Jordan?
Yes.
Is the rubric and the how going to predetermine how you would vote for this?
So the part that we know we have to do, there's nothing we can do about that. But my understanding is, as Dr. Stewart just said, the how and the local piece of it, that we do have influence over that. So just as they're describing it, I'd just like to have a better understanding of it.
Sure.
Because there may be something that maybe we want to do differently in Norfolk that perhaps somebody else does. So I have to vote on the law, because it's the law.
Right.
But the piece that's within our control, I just want to have an understanding of how we're doing that and, just understand it.
Okay, and that's
Yeah.
well within your right and privilege. Just want to remind you, we set the policy as the board, the administration sets the regulations, and we don't have direct control over that. Am I correct with that?
The regulation
Regulation.
rests with the administration.
Great, that's
Yes.
what I thought.
However, of course, we work as a governance team.
Sure.
So what we bring to you, we want you to have clear understanding around it and clear support around it. And so it is not an issue for us at all to provide anything that's connected with what we're doing. So
I didn't think, I wasn't alluding that you
Yeah,
would, but I'm
yeah.
just saying that what our role is, but, and
Sure.
like I said, you can always ask the question.
Yeah, just want to make sure I
And
understand.
the one thing that I would ask is, what plans do we have to roll out communication for this?
Thank you for asking that. I know I have spoken with each of the presidents of the teacher organizations about this specific statute for the Code of Virginia, and I'm sure you'll probably get more feedback regarding how they feel about the code. Upon your approval of the policy, we certainly want to send out a district-wide email to all staff, because it will impact all staff. And so I'll work with Elizabeth Mather's department to make sure something is disseminated division-wide. In addition to that, it will be important for my team and the executive directors to work with the principals in making sure that they have a clear understanding of the change. And we would be recommending that during the pre-service week of the school year next year, that the principals in each building make sure they provide PD for their teachers, so there's clear understanding around the policy. But in terms of the how, Mr. Jordan, is outlined in A through F. I don't know if that, okay, that's the how. That's what, and again, we looked at the work of some other school districts in determining what we thought would be best for our school district. So the A through F describes how we would go about implementing this policy.
Ms. Doyle?
So, not to ask maybe the obvious, but is there any legislation that was considered this past General Assembly that might alter this in the near future?
I'm not aware of that.
Not that
Are you
I'm aware
aware?
of.
Okay.
I'll be extremely surprised if any entity moves away from this whole concept. Many districts and divisions and states have already done so. So it's just a matter of our administration doing the work in a way that's fair and beneficial to the staff and to the students.
Dr. Stewart, did you have?
I think that VSBA will help us. I'm sure this is not a final answer in the eyes of many school systems. I think they'll be helpful in helping us communicate with our colleagues across the state, other school systems. And Mr. Cloud, have you heard, or Dr. King, have you, either of you heard of any school systems that are resisting in any way a policy that would comply with the General Assemblies? Have you heard?
I have.
I think, Mr. Jordan, I think this is going to be a topic for a lot of discussion, and I think VSBA will help us in convening that discussion and making sure that the how that we all arrive at is a how that is best for teachers and teaching.
Well, in November of 1980, I was number 11 on the seniority list. In January, I was looking for a job, so I know what it's like. So,
Yes.
and it's no fun to be riffed at any time.
Okay. The next policy that I would like to bring to your attention is GCPD, Professional Staff Discipline. And the NPS policy is GCPD, Professional Staff Members, Contract Status, and Discipline. And again, we need to look at this policy because there have been amendments to the Virginia Code, specifically to 22.1-294C and 22.1-304, Sections A and F. And so with this particular policy, we did not make a lot of changes other than dates that have been required by, again, the Virginia Code. And June 15th has been established as the new deadline for a school division or the school board to notify a principal or assistant principal or an instructional supervisor that they are going to be reassigned as a teacher, as a classroom teacher. And so that's why we had to change the dates from April 15th to June 15th in alignment with the code. In addition to that, we had to change other dates within this policy, again to June 15th and another date to July 1 related to the reduction in force. It used to be June 1 that we had to notify, and that's been pushed back in the code to July 1. And so we changed our new policy to reflect that change in date as well. And also, we have to notify teachers by June the 15th if they will be non-renewed. And so if we do not do so, then they will be guaranteed a contract for the following school year. So again, our policy was revised to reflect those changes.
Is that information widely known among our teacher community?
I would say no. We would certainly we would communicate it upon your approval of the policy. We would do so immediately.
Yeah, that's just a tight timeline when you think about it. I know we're coming back next week, and then between April,
Right.
9 and 15 is
Right,
very short.
that's right. And we have already done so. We've already not notified teachers if they will be non-renewed. So we are ahead of the deadline with that.
I'm just thinking about Dr. Robinson's comment about communication, being clear, transparent.
Absolutely.
Dr. Stewart.
In a prediction of a dark side, Mr. Cloud, I hope that you will help us in the future. The very General Assembly that are passing such things as this and other things is the same General Assembly that has not approved a budget this year. And so all of this could become a moot issue. And having lived through this once before, Dr. King, I hope you never did down in Georgia, but this becomes very difficult if the local government is not told what the money of the state government, and it gets to the issue of contract and all these other things. So I hope that you be prepared to keep us informed of what you see as our legal recourse in hopefully in May and not in June. But this has developed twice before, and it gets very messy and makes all these things moot and everything else. But hopefully they can do a good job and get a budget, and then we'll be able to implement new policy.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Okay, and the
Sorry?
final policy is policy GCG, which is professional staff probationary term and continuing contract. And again, this policy is being revised due to an amendment with the Virginia Code, specifically 22-1303, 22.1-304, sections A and F. With 22.1-303, it's up to the school board to determine the probationary term for probationary teachers. It reads a probationary term of service of at least 3 years, and at the option of the local school board, up to 5 years, and the same school division shall be required before a teacher is issued a continuing contract. It would be the recommendation of the administration that this remains at 3 years to support retention and recruitment. In addition, and we have already discussed some other dates, there's some dates that refer to notification of teachers as it relates to non-renewals and the RIF policy, the July 1 date, that's also within this policy, and certainly it would have to be revised to reflect the code.
Any questions?
Just one question. So you're recommending keeping it where it is?
Absolutely.
Would you keep an eye on any other school systems around the state that may be making any modifications?
Yes.
Just so that we would be aware of that?
Yes, and my team and I have had discussions around that.
Thank you very much.
And we all agreed that at this time, we would recommend 3 to you based upon being able to attract and retain
I agree.
our teachers.
Thank you very much.
And so that concludes the policy discussion, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you, Dr. Byrdsong. And team,
All right.
thank you. Dr. Quinn? Move on to 2.03.
Well, let me say this. The next piece would be strategic plan related for human resources.
Right. Oh,
We're not done
that's
with
right.
it yet.
Yep. I'm sorry. All right.
Part 2.
Thank you, Dr.
Just give us
Byrdsong.
A few more minutes, please. Okay. All right, so again, thank you. We will be providing you with an update as it relates to the Department of Human Resources and the action plans that have been assigned to us. We have been assigned a total of 10 action plans, and today we will be reporting out to you the action around 4 of those plans that are most relevant to our work right now. And as you can see, I have members of my team here, starting with Dr. Lynn Meeks, who is our Assistant Director of Human Resources, Dr. Ronnie Myers-Dobb, who handles secondary staffing and talent ed, and Amanda Schilling, who is the newest member of our team, who is our technology administrator, and she's also responsible for staffing guest teachers. And so they each have a part. They serve as a champion for some of our plans, and so I'm going to turn it over first to Mrs. Schilling, who will be discussing creating teams of alumni to recruit highly qualified, effective, prospective Norfolk Public School staff from their alma maters. So, Mrs. Schilling.
You may remember at our last update that we did share with you that action step 1 of this plan is complete, and that included surveying existing personnel for their interest in participating in the teams. As a reminder, we had a little over 300 respondents, and due to some criteria that we established, we were able to narrow down that list to approximately 200 employees. Step 2 does address those criteria and the rotation cycle, what we refer to as the calendar for the recruiting opportunities. Our criteria, again, were that the individuals were full-time contracted employees on a continuing contract with Norfolk, that they had a degree from the facility at which we were holding the event, and also that they had a proficient or better performance evaluation rating the previous school year. Step 3 involves providing recruitment team members with interviewing techniques training. At this time, Dr. Jackie Wilson is meeting with every participant who will be traveling in these events prior to the recruitment activity. She is providing the techniques training as well as different recruiting, items that we have to offer our potential candidates. With number 4, we have a complete recruitment schedule for the year. We're certainly in the middle of recruitment season at this time, for lack of a better phrase. And we will continue to add events should they become available. As far as providing quality guest teachers, we are likewise at 100% with this step, as we do have an existing procedure for securing daily guest teachers. And finally, as far as maintaining and analyzing the data around these teams, you'll remember that year 1 is to establish a baseline. So I do have that database created with data from our current events added. So we are using that information to establish our baseline for next year. And again, that data is based upon the 3 survey questions, which are, first, did the individual develop a connection or have a connection with the alumni recruiter? Second, is Norfolk Public Schools a good fit for the candidate? And finally, will they apply with us? So that information is being maintained after each event. The database is updated.
Any questions related to this plan?
A substitute. Yes. It's a nomenclature, yes. It's a substitute teacher.
Like for a day or like long-term? I'm
Could
thinking
be a long-term guest teacher or a
We have
daily
both.
guest teacher.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Okay. Our
Any
next
other
pl-
questions?
Our next plan is Strategy 3, Plan Number 1. We are looking to increase and improve the school division's capacity to attract and secure highly effective teacher candidates. And certainly, we're looking at increasing our candidate pool by 10% on an annual basis. And Dr. Lynn Meeks serves as our champion for this action plan. Dr. Meeks.
Good afternoon. You may remember from when we reported previously that we were on our way to meeting our goal. At that time, our goal is 2,192 applicants, and currently, as of March 26th, we're at 1,831. So we're at 83.5% as far as meeting our goal of applicants. This particular plan has 7 action steps, and the first one, we have not met that one yet because we will not know our teacher allocation until approximately May 1st. Once we know our teacher allocation, we will be able to identify our vacancies as early as possible so that we could address that particular action step. The next action step is 100%, and this is where we got tongue-tied for a minute. This is where we revised our voluntary transfer deadlines in order to make everything happen earlier. So by June 1, we have a cutoff date for those internal transfers, and that is an increase from an earlier date from July 31st, so it's quite a bit earlier. And we did have quite an extensive communication plan with our teachers because that is such a difference than in the past. Now with action step number 3, we also are at 100%, and this is, again, where we're going to reassign our teachers internally by June 1. We have not been able to meet action step 4 yet due to the time of the school year, and this is where we're going to generate a vacancy list for each school. And that will take place once we know the teacher allocation. We can compare that with our known resignations. We also have been able to meet action step 5, and this is something we do ongoing year-round, where we advertise, we have job fairs, and we have professional networking sites in order to seek highly effective teacher candidates. Number 6, we're at 99.99%. with number 6, and this is where we deploy our screened candidates to the schools. And impressively, out of 2,730 teachers, we only have 4 positions that we were not able to find candidates to deploy. And that's why we're at 99.99% with that particular action step. And finally, hire recommended candidates in a timely manner. We define timely manner as 3 business days, and we're at 92% in meeting that action step, because there are occasions when we have delays with background checks and other issues such as that. Okay. Any questions?
All right. And then our next action plan, strategy 3, number 5, we're looking to ensure that we increase our highly qualified percentage to 100%. And so, Dr. Meeks, again.
Okay. And again, this is, from our standpoint, an impressive effort. Our teachers, all teachers hired will be highly qualified, and we're at 99.16%. And that is, just to give you an idea of why it's 0.16%, you may have a special education teacher who may have 4 endorsements, which is pretty impressive, but may have 1 student who might be in an exceptionality that's not in the endorsement area, and that would create what we call a gig with the state. So previously, we were at 97.34%, so we have seen improvement in this particular action step. As far as number 2, we're not there in our calendar yet. This is looking at staffing for 2014-2015, and so we are at 0% with making sure that principals have assigned teachers to the appropriate endorsement areas. Number 3, the IPEL report will be reviewed with principals annually. We're at 100%. We work closely with our principals to make sure that teachers are endorsed and teaching in their endorsement areas. And number 4 is projected for 2014-15, and this is a strategy to increase our pool for those hard-to-fill areas where our existing Norfolk Public School teachers will be able to use tuition assistance funds to take Praxis 2 exams and add endorsements that they otherwise would have to take coursework and take a lengthy amount of time. The state does give us the option of, for certain areas, for teachers to test out. And so we're at 50% with this particular plan.
Okay. Our final plan for this afternoon or evening, strategy 3, plan number 6, we're looking to establish a performance level baseline and increase the alignment of performance standard number 7, which is student academic progress ratings, with student growth outcomes to 100%. And Dr. Meyer-Staub is going to give us a brief update in that area.
This plan was originally supposed to be a year 2 plan, but back in June, we decided that we were going to make it a year 1 plan. And with this strategy, we looked at the baseline data from the 12-13 school year to look at where teachers were rated on standard 7. So that was number 1 is what we did, and number 2, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. Number 2 was determining the baseline data. We then started looking at various software platforms that were used to help districts manage performance evaluation systems. So we spoke to some of the local school systems. We spoke to Virginia Beach. We also spoke to Williamsburg, James City County, and Newport News. Virginia Beach and Williamsburg, James City County were both already using Talent Ed Perform, and Newport News was looking at it at the same time as we were. And I guess it was about in July or end of June, we went ahead and did a contract with Talent Ed Perform to bring this on, and that's when we initiated our first training and initial exposure of Talent Ed Perform with the principals at Convocation at that time. So we are fully implementing this with the teacher performance evaluation system as well as the principal performance evaluation system. And we are adding a new feature to this, and we've started training on this year, which is going to be implemented next year. So this is the highlight of Talent Ed, as part of this process, they have to maintain a documentation log of evidence to show their progress within each of the performance standards throughout the year. And there is a feature within Talent Ed Perform Now called Artifacts Portfolio, which will allow them to do this digitally. They can download PDF files, documents, they can take pictures, they can do videos, and so they can use this to establish their progress across all 7 standards. And most recently, they have created an app for the Artifacts Portfolio, so that allows some of our very tech-savvy teachers they can pull out their phone, take pictures, use video, and hit send, and it goes right to their digital portfolio maintained within Talent Ed. So I've started training some of the schools that are very interested in this feature that wanted to pilot it this year. I've trained at 4 different elementary schools, and some of them have started using the feature, and this is planning for what will become mandatory next year as part of this process.
Very good.
That
Thank you.
concludes our presentation. Thank you.
One, not about this, but about your area. It's about comfort and loyalty. I think that the recent editorial article in the Norfolk newspaper about the transformational initiative, which is significant, is very supportive and well done. There's one statement in there, it says, proceeding with so much change at one time requires communication, precision, and monitoring. I also think it requires comfort and loyalty. So I know that at this time, teachers across the system, as the word comes to me, whether I want it or not, are nervous. And if there's anything you can do to be supportive to our dean, to our central staff and our principals and whatever, and providing comfort and communication, that we are as loyal to them as they have been to teaching our students. I think this is the time to do that, and I know you're planning to do it.
Absolutely, we are.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Human Resources? Dr. Byrdsong? Thank you very much. Now we're ready to go to 2.03. Dr. King?
Vice Chair Robinson, members of the board, 2.03 will consist of Operations Strategic Plan Phase 1 Progress Report. Dr. Simmons.
Dr. Robinson, Dr. King, members of the board, I would like to ask the finest champions in Norfolk Public Schools to come forward. That would be Rex Kay, Andrea Sikora, and Dr. Chuck Wooding, and thank them for their patience and endurance while we take our turn to explain to you how we are approaching the 5 standards and the 46 action steps that fall under the auspice of operations and governmental affairs. We're going to start with strategy number 1, action plan number 6, and I think the clicker is on your end, Rex, so you can take control of that right in front of you.
All right.
Okay.
Good afternoon.
Dr. Robinson, board members, and Dr. King. Last time I had this, I think I sped through it a little bit too quick, didn't I? So, which button?
The right.
The right one?
There you go. And the next one.
Okay. All right, so the strategic plan, of course, calls for, in this step, for us to create conditions for a healthier and eco-friendly environment in our facilities. And it's kind of small up there. The first step, of course, it asks us to reevaluate our recycling efforts. We created a recycling plan back in 2010, and as of August, of course, we've got that plan under review. And what our intention is to review the plan and kind of tweak it and then see if we can move that forward. We do have our recycling efforts at a pretty good pace in about 6 of our schools. However, every school recycles. It's just that the plan hadn't pushed out where someone in the school is championing that effort. Okay. The next thing, generate a list of easy energy saving tips. That has also been done back in 2010, and that is about 95% complete. And we're also reviewing that list so we can tweak it and maybe add some things to it that have come about, since that time. We're already having use recycled and toxin-free chemicals that we use for custodial supplies, and about 90% of our products are of that nature. Of course, use the available technology to conduct required meetings in a paperless and travel-free environment. I think we have, some departments throughout our system that do that. Of course, for us, we do that as much as possible, but we still need paper. When it comes to plans and documents, we just gotta have them. Pursue current and emerging green design for additions and renovations by requiring contractors to utilize green standards. I will have you know, we just had this discussion as part of our PPEA review on Monday. And so we only have, of course, one school, which is Crossroads, that is LEED certified. And so we're pushing that effort out amongst our 5 new schools as well. We might not be LEED certified, but we'll be have that capability to do so if we choose to go that route. Create communication for students and staff to facilitate their understanding and participation. That is 100% complete, and when I say it's 100% complete, that's been done at Crossroads. And since that's our only school that's LEED certified, that's the only place it's been done. However, if we push out our new schools to take that path, then those communications will be created for those schools as well. And to increase the number of leaders that possess the knowledge under LEED, what we're planning to do in my department, and you see it says 10% complete, we're planning to have all of our supervisors to either pursue some online courses, attend some seminars, or take some courses to develop that LEED knowledge. I think we only have, at this time, 2 of our staff members that have that, but we're looking to get 4, maybe to 5 more. Okay.
One at a very high level, on the performance indicator, for example, for the first step, you're identifying that you're 40% complete. The task is just to do an evaluation. The overall performance indicator for the plan is just doing a quarterly analysis of conservation efforts. Are you all going to be updating the indicators? So, for example, if you said you had 6 schools that are currently at a certain level that you're going to begin to set a goal for 25.
Since this strategic plan, we're going to be updating. Before, we haven't done so. Okay. And I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2010, the program just sort of got pushed out there to every school. And so we provided whatever outlay was necessary, and that's to put receptacles in every facility, in every classroom, and at the end of hallways and corridors where needed. And so at the time, of course, there was a person that worked out of this building through the purchasing department that was kind of pushing the recycling program. And that person left the school system, and then it was transferred to another person. So the school system currently has no one that's really has the pom-poms on pushing the program. If it's not done in the school, which is those 6 schools I was telling you about earlier, then it's not really getting pushed out. So it's a matter of us probably getting together. We're going to probably have to do it by committee and bring the city in, which is John Dool, and probably some other members from TPC who picks up our recycling, and probably try to get the program, elevated somewhat. And so we will provide that update.
And are there any, I'm sorry, Dr. King, you
Just along that line, this is an example of the one in the performance indicator category where we're working to modify the wording in the indicators so that we have like incremental goals.
Okay.
And so, and this one has not been modified to that point, as Mr. Gay has mentioned already, where it shows whether we want to decrease by X% or increase by X%. But when we modify it, it'll reflect that in the document, so we can better monitor whether we're moving in that direction or not.
Do we have any board policies, or do you all have any internal goals or definitions of air quality in the schools and some way of measuring that and impacting that?
Yeah, I mean, we do measure air quality. Of course, that's handled in risk management. So there have been instances, even before Dr. Wooding came on board, where we probably thought we might have had some problems in some areas. And so what we do is use an outside firm to come in and take air samples. But we do have some standards we have to meet for air quality.
Those are federal standards or, I mean, who sets the standard?
Now that, I'd probably have to,
That's a standard that is established by the state and by the federal government. And it relates to mold-free environments, asbestos-free environments, those kinds of things. And we do inspections, we take samples, as I said, to ensure that there's no asbestos, especially floating in the environment. And so when we do find that, then we have to abate it. We don't have any right now. That doesn't mean that there's not asbestos in the buildings.
Right, understand.
It just means it's not floating.
Right.
Rex Gay has a team that's readily available, and he and Dr. Wooding work together on a case-by-case basis. We have a lot of mold in our schools, and that's because of the weather. The buildings are old, and so they rise to the occasion immediately when we have a need, and that's often.
yeah, we actually, Dr. Simmons and I were at Larchmont this morning, and we went on a tour and we went in the media center and talked to the media specialist, and she had some concerns about one of the areas behind the media center. So, and Dr. Melissa, you probably know about that. And so I've already contacted Dr. Wooding's office. Bill Bankard is aware of it, and so he's going to take action to at least go out and check that out and make sure there's not a mold problem.
Oftentimes, when people see what they think is mold, it's mildew. And black mold is the one that we're mostly concerned with. But, yes.
Are there other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Gay?
On the whole area?
No, just his portion.
Strategy number 4, action plan number 1 will be presented by Andrea Sikora, and she's collaborated with Media Services, and we'd like for her to present the 15 action steps.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Good afternoon. Yes, as Dr. Simmons mentioned, this is a joint effort between Media Services and Information Technology dealing with incorporating digital learning resources into all of our K-12 classrooms. This action actually also dovetails with our educational technology plan that is currently in place for MPS with VDOE. It is a requirement that we have an educational technology plan that is approved by VDOE every few years. We are coming up on the last year of that plan, and I am currently sitting on the committee with VDOE to work on what the new plan will look like once the new superintendent is in place at the state. Originally, strategy number 4, action plan 1, had 17 tasks, and as Mrs. Flynn and I reviewed this, 2 of the tasks didn't really fit into this area very well, so they were removed. What I will do is, instead of going line by line, I'm going to give you a description of what we're doing in these areas, and please feel free to ask questions as we go along, because a few of them were interrelated. And it's a little hard to put a percentage of completion on this plan, too, because we would say we're around 53, 55%, but this is never going to be a plan that will be 100% complete. We will always be looking at how to incorporate digital resources within our learning environment, and we have new ones that come out all the time. So we're constantly reviewing what is available and what's best for our environment. The task associated with having a policy in place for acceptable use and internet safety guidelines, we've had those in place for a while. The acceptable use policy, if that ever has to be updated, which we do review annually, has to come to the school board for approval. And as new devices or ways of doing technology within the classroom is addressed, that obviously gets addressed as well. and internet safety guidelines as well get addressed on an annual basis. The evaluation of mobile devices. We've done that, and we've continued to do it. We have evaluated iPads, Nooks, Kindles, multiple tablets. We have standardized on the iPad. I could tell you that that is a completed task, but again, we have new devices coming out all the time. We're always looking at what's going to be the best fit for our classrooms. There is a task in here for an educational program for creation of lesson plans and curriculum and holding that data. And we do have one in place, and that is SchoolNet currently, and that is where our teachers can go and get their resources. As mentioned earlier by Mr. Coleman, it has a task in here for expanding credit recovery, not just for our students that are using it in high school, but also for grades 6 through 8 and online course offerings. And as Mr. Coleman mentioned, we've been using NovaNet for several years now. GradPoint is something we're looking at moving towards, and we also have resources through Virtual Virginia. As far as managing digital content goes, this year we were able to move our students off of an email program that we had been using for a while onto Office 365, which we thought was a fantastic opportunity for us as an educational organization. We will be following that up with moving all of our staff onto Office 365 as an email program this summer in a phased approach. The nice thing, too, about Office 365 is, as a resource for the students, they not only will have Office on their, wherever they log in, whether it be at home or at school, they'll have access to Word, PowerPoint, Excel. They'll also have 5 copies. So if they've got an iPhone or an iPad or a computer at home, once we implement the second portion of Office 365, their devices will also be able to read that digital content using Office as well. And that will be free to them as a student within Norfolk Public Schools. There was a line in here about allocating a sufficient number of IT staff. We have included that in the budget request for this year. We're going to cross our fingers in order to provide better support for the district. Virtualization for our infrastructure was also mentioned, and virtualization is something that my department has been doing for some time now. Our servers are 80% virtualized. Anywhere where we can virtualize, we will. And what that basically does is it reduces the number of physical pieces of equipment to less to support more efficient services and those types of things. A good example is roughly every school has 6 servers that supports that school site. We have 1 physical server on site, and the other 5 are virtualized. BYOD, it's still in planning. We are working towards putting that in place, and the things that we've done this year has shored up the infrastructure that we do have in place. We've created virtual LANs throughout the district that allows us to segment traffic. We are preparing for the future of being able to handle a multitude of different type of logons. The one piece that we are missing at this point is our identity management software piece, and that's a very expensive piece of it because us being a K-12 organization, we have to make sure that we are tracking all of our users on our network, and that we have a way to be able to do that. So that is another piece that we also added into the budget as well this year, but we have made strides moving forward with that as well. Yes.
I read in the paper today that Supt adopted bring their own policy for their high school.
Yes.
Are we looking at implementing a policy such as this in a broken down method, so that maybe we first start with high schools, for example, and then
Such as a
move on?
pilot?
A pilot,
Absolutely,
yes.
yes, absolutely. In fact, another part of what we had requested for next year, and we've been working with Kenyatta Goshen at NTC, is to really try to get NTC where they need to be from a technology standpoint. We want to get them all the equipment they need. We want to get them the identity management software, and we want to be able to implement BYOD over there first. They have night programs, and they have a multitude of people coming in and out of that building. And it is a perfect setting to really be able to do that. And our hopes is that's where we will start.
Do you anticipate something like that being ready for the fall school year?
it is budgetary related, so we'll have to see what happens. I'm hopeful, but, you know, we are kind of at the mercy of what comes out of the budget.
It's inclusive in the budget request we're sending over to the city.
It is inclusive. It was part of our special projects.
Can I follow up on that question?
Yes.
So presumably those dollars don't hit our books until July 1, which leaves you 60 days roughly to school. So to Noel's point, will you still be able to execute on that to be ready for school year if you have the budget?
If we had the budget, there's a possibility. I would have to look at how much work we would have to do to implement it at one site, based on the projects that are already in the pipeline. But I would be hopeful that we could, if not the day the doors open, within a month of the doors opening, because we really want to move that along so that she's got some opportunities over there based on the fact that she's a technical center.
Right.
A couple other notable improvements that we have worked through. There's been a lot of discussion about Windows 7 and April 8th deadline, and I know you all have not gotten an update as to where we are with that. We have roughly 27,000 computers in the district. We are 99% complete. We're down to a few hundred at tops left to do. The staff has worked very hard this year trying to get through that, and you have to touch every computer, and we've had about 30 staff working on that. So in addition to everything else, we should be in good shape as far as that goes. I don't want to forget the new student information system that we are in the midst of implementing that will go live at the end of this summer, August of 2014, and what that will do for digital resources, not only for our teachers, but our students and our parents as well, and the offerings that that's going to have for us. And then I could go on, but I won't. The one thing I did want to mention, and Bobby, don't shoot me if I do this wrong, but there is a whole professional development piece of this. Digital resources are great, but you can provide a tool, you can provide resources, but if they're not used effectively in the classroom, I'm not so sure that they're going to gain any significant student achievement. So one of the professional development models that's being used is TPAC, which is basically you're taking technical knowledge, you're taking content knowledge, and you're taking pedagogical knowledge and putting it all together. And where they all three intersect is where you get the biggest bang for your buck. It's where that teaching staff is in front of that classroom, and they know how to take the technology and infuse it into the classroom in order to make a really rich learning experience. And we know that that's where the rubber hits the road. Tools are great, but really how to use those tools is the important part. Yes, please, Bobby.
This summer, Norfolk Public Schools is hosting the VSBA Summer Institute at Crossroads School. And we have Dr. Helen Crompton from ODU, and that is part of our strategic plan, is to develop partners at our local institutions. And Dr. Helen Crompton is going to be our keynote speaker, and she's also going to be presenting a session on TPAC right after her keynote address. And we look forward to having at least 10 Norfolk Public School teachers attend for free, and anybody beyond that they would have to pay, but that was the deal that we worked out with VSBA. And hope that everybody can see that session, and if not, then we hope to send people there. Will be the trainers that can come back and implement within our district, because that's the best way to do it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just like to compliment teamwork. I really appreciate the two of you collaborating as it relates to technology. Thank you. So on to priority number 6, strategy number 4, action plan number 3, and that would be Rex Gay again.
Again.
Host environments in which all individuals feel safe and secure, and evaluating HVAC cooling and heating needs.
All right. Of course, our first action step here is to create a roof replacement schedule. And I need to let you know that we've got a roof survey that was prepared back in 2007, and since that time, we've completed 7 roofs throughout the district. And so by August, what we'll do is review that schedule, and then we'll be able to complete a roof replacement schedule. And of course, it's all going to depend on what kind of money we have coming through the annual CIP agreement, and then what other needs may arise at the same time as the roof situations. So we pretty much know where, our bad roofs are. We know which ones need to be replaced. We know what needs to be repaired. And so we'll create a schedule from that document. Facilities orientation for building administrators. This is something that we've been doing for the last 19 years. What we do really at the end of June is find out which principals are coming into the school system new, find out which ones may be reassigned. We make contact with them. We go out and visit the schools, and I'll take 2 staff members, one from the custodial side and one from the trade side, and we'll tour their facilities with them, try to answer any kind of questions they may have, and we'll also try to bring them up to speed on their particular building. This next step, we kind of tweaked it a little bit. We made it say incorporate municipal codes. Initially, it said incorporate building codes, and we couldn't figure out why we would discuss building codes with principals. So what we think we need to do is devise a plan where we discuss municipal codes, and we'll include life safety, fire safety, and environmental. And I think that's going to have to be a collaborative effort between our department and facilities management. So that's something that we're going to need to develop, but it shouldn't take us long to do it. Conduct monthly building inspections. This is something that actually goes on daily between facilities management and the custodial staff in the schools. We've got better than 300 employees, so in every building there's inspections being done when we go out and visit schools and with the staff that's there. Some of these inspections are required to be logged in and reviewed every month. So this is something that can easily happen monthly, but it happens on a daily basis. Yes.
Do you report to the principals what the outcome is of those building inspections so that they're aware of what you're seeing in their buildings?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yes. Increase the effort to create a comfortable school environment by maintaining consistent temperatures. Of course, some of you already know that that's kind of hard to do in some of our schools, but we do have set points that we use for heating, set points that we use for cooling, and then of course there's a daily maintenance throughout our schools in an effort, to keep those levels where we need them. There was an energy management program established back in 1996, one in where we probably got all of the low-hanging fruit that you might call it. And so we were able to garner some savings through special grants and projects. Some of those things have, run out. And now, I guess between myself and Dr. Wooding, we're looking into some other areas about being able to save and conserve energy.
We're in the process of conducting research so that we can release an RFP soon, so that we can identify a company that can help us with this.
Which leads us to Strategy 4 Action Plan 16. And, yes.
Anybody have any other questions for Rex at this time? Thank you, Dr.
I'm sorry. We'll host environments in which all individuals feel safe and secure. And the specific result that we're looking for is conservation of energy and dollars. And as Rex just pointed out, and Dr. Simmons just pointed out, we are looking at engaging the services of energy conservation services. And we have talked with one company, and we have decided to issue an RFP for some competition among those companies. Hopefully it will be issued in the next day or two. And we can engage those services within the next 2 weeks and put them into action by the beginning of summer, so that by the end of summer we will be able to determine whether or not we have found some savings. These companies will be paid from the savings. There's no upfront cost to the system. There's no cost to the system at all. They will be paid completely from any savings that they generate for the system. So you don't have to find any other dollars for us. They promise a lot of results, and we are looking forward to that. They will assign a couple of people to work with us, and they will work directly with Mr. Gay and his workforce. And hopefully by the end of summer, as I said, we will have something definite to report to you in regards to a quarterly result. Mr. Gay's already mentioned that we have identified at least 6 schools within the system that have green initiatives going on. Specifically, those are Granby, Bayview, Ghent, Monroe, Ocean View with Willoughby, and Berkeley, Capistello. We are not going to try to reinvent the wheel. We are going to piggyback on the good things that they are doing and try to spread that throughout the system so that we can go green completely. And hopefully our recycling efforts will be maximized. We're going to try to establish an award and recognition program for those schools and those students and teachers who are doing those things, and perhaps reward them in some way or another. Hopefully we'll find some grantees, grantors out there who will assist us without having to reach into the pockets of the school. We're going to develop and implement a seminar series to educate and provide training for teachers and students about recycling and energy efficiency and conservation issues, which will enhance and sustain resources, save money, and create responsible citizens. We will do that through our own efforts as well as the efforts of these whichever company we decide to go with. And that is one of their promises, and we expect to hold them to their promise. We will be reviewing renovations and new construction to ensure optimal energy savings techniques that are being incorporated with the goal of a net zero building. Hopefully, we will get staff and students and everybody else to buy into the conservation effort. We'll turn off lights that are not needed. They'll make sure water's not dripping where it doesn't need to be dripping. And all of these things, while they seem small, in the end result will be cost savings. And, we're looking forward to engaging those things.
I'd like to add, in addition to the safety concerns at PB Young, there were 2 cameras that are out. One has been replaced and it's up, and the other camera will be in place and working and operative 100% for the school by Friday of this week. I think there was another concern regarding Granby, which is a pretty big job that Rex has been handling. We're about 85% complete on Granby, and that involves 130 cameras. They move from analog to digital. There are 27 elementary schools that could use upgrades, and we had been receiving grant money. That money is not available anymore, so it becomes a budgetary item, but we're trying to move in the right direction.
Questions?
Well, just the one on the energy audit, does that in any way align with what was done with Pepco Energy some years ago when they came in and?
No, actually, Pepco, the agreement we entered into with them was a lighting retrofit, and that was throughout the district. The RFP that we're going to put out now, like Dr. Winning said, is looking for a company to come in where we provide no upfront costs, and they're supposed to be able to tour our facilities and show us how to save money. And just by touring them, and mostly at night when nobody's in the building, we're going to have to provide an office space, I think, for 2 people. And actually, the company that we met with is a company that we met with about 5 years ago under another name. Back at that time, what the problem that we had was that we were going to have to hire 2 employees that are probably about $70,000 a year. And that was upfront cost that we had to put out. But at the same time, we were getting ready to lay people off. And so we never went down that road, but now this approach they have is different.
And the savings during the first 6 months all goes to the school system. They don't get paid the first 6 months. So any savings that are incurred, that are earned, comes to the system.
And it's all managed by a software program that will provide results for us 24/7 regarding our savings. We heard an optimistic figure of around $800,000 mid-year that we could save, so we're going to take a serious look at it.
Dr. Stewart?
Something critical to me as a board member and something small to make sure the paper is perfect. The critical thing is several years in a row prior to Dr. King, Dr. Simmons, you all coming here, the state of Virginia and the federal government reduced funding for Norfolk Public Schools drastically, and deferments occurred. When we begin our master planning session in May, we've got to focus like a laser beam on the two reports that you provided us, and to include in our master planning a coordinated CIP and next budget cycle. It's going to be critical to me, and that's going to be, so all the great things that's going on being highlighted here, so that we can begin to see over the next 4 or 5 years how we can arrive at those things. Something small just to make paper perfect, strategy 4, action plan 3, and I'll give these to you, Dr. Simmons. If we add a verb in front of that, we'll be cool. It could be conduct, could be great, doesn't matter, just to make sure it's good. Ms. Sikora, action plan 4, plan 1, item 5, again, the same thing, and I'll hand these to Dr. Simmons. And number 9, easily done, doesn't matter what verb it is, but like propose the policy or something like that.
Grammar police.
Huh? No, it's not a grammar police, it's just, the format is verb, noun, and then noun, verb, like plan dinner, dinner planned. So without the verbs, then we don't know what to evaluate, but that's just to make the paper perfect. Your effort is almost there.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Dr. Simmons?
Okay, so we're going to move forward to, just trying to follow Dr. Stewart and get out of order here. Strategy 4, action plan number 37, thank you, Dr. Stewart. Create an open campus, and if you would click, Rex, that would be great. Under recent events, you might note that Dr. King, and he was accompanied by key staff, presented to the Virginia State Board of Education the open campus concept, and we were discussing waivers, seat time before Labor Day start, and all of those kinds of things. And what the State Board has said to us is that we may not need to seek approval. They were very grateful that we came before them and presented our concept. They said oftentimes school districts make decisions and move forward, and then the state has questions that were left unanswered. So Dr. King did a very good presentation. It was received well. And according to the State Department, they are going to make a decision to probably not require us to have to do any of the waivers, but we're waiting to hear back from them. So we're moving along in that regard. The next step is that we have implementation committees that will go into effect right away. So I'd like to kind of go through some of those for you so you can see what our plans are. There's a steering committee, and Tom Jackson, who's the CFO, Chris Wittenberg, will be on that committee, and I will be on that committee, and I'm sure we will engage Dr. Thornton on that committee also. We will not make any financial decisions without him. These conversations started in January 2014, and they are ongoing. Next slide. Once we make a decision and it's final, we have to move forward with the contract. And so those conversations will be had with me and Tom Jackson, Chris Wittenberg, and also Dr. Thornton. And we hope to have all of that finalized optimistically by April 10th, 2014. And so we may have to make an adjustment, but that's our intent. The next committee is an Education and Parental Involvement Committee, a very key and very important committee led by Dr. Charbonnet, Mr. Coleman, and Jennifer Parker from Magic Johnson Bridgescape. It's going to start April 10, and it will be ongoing. We intend to engage our parents with signatures of compacts. They will agree to everything that we're doing with the child, and we intend to engage them fully throughout. The next committee is a Human Resources Committee that will be headed by none other than Dr. Sharon Byrdsong and Sarah Akay from Magic Johnson Bridgegate. The start date will be April the 10th. We intend to recruit the best and most highly qualified teachers to motivate our children for this school. It's a special school that's going to require special staff, and I know we'll get that taken care of through Dr. Byrdsong. The next committee is Community Engagement and Brand Awareness. That committee is going to be led with Carlos Clanton, Elizabeth Mather. I'm going to be on that committee, Natalie Williams and Tom Jackson from Magic Johnson. This is a critical committee because the civic leagues are in the backyard of this school. We've met with them after explaining what the school would provide for these kids. I think they're convinced that they want to be a part of this. And so we intend to involve as many civic leagues as we can. We want to engage the community that surrounds the school and involve everybody starting April 10th. And that will be ongoing. These committees will not stop. The next committee is the Facilities, Technology, and School Food Services. And of course, Helen Phillips, Rex Gay, Andrea, with regard to technology, which is so important because it's a virtual environment and we need a school-wide wireless, and that's provided by Magic Johnson. So Mike Williams and Ann Pickens from their IT staff will be supporting us also in this committee. It'll start up April 10th. The next committee is the Student Recruitment, Enrollment, and Parental Engagement Committee. And that's Dr. Charbonnet, Mr. Coleman, Quentin Smith, with Communities in Schools. They are our partner, and they will be on site. They'll have an office, and Community in Schools will find our children jobs along with our staff, so that if they want to work, they're going to make sure that happens through community engagement. And Tracy Kuhn, that starts April 10th also. The Finance Committee will be led by Dr. Thornton, and supporting him in these efforts will be me, Rex Gay, Helen Phillips, Aaron Greigel, and Chris Wittenberg from the Magic Johnson organization. And the start date, we started this committee actually in March 20, 2014, and we are ongoing with that. We intend to raise money and secure whatever funds we can to help support our efforts. The CTE program design is going to be led by Kevin Monroe and Kenyatta Goshen, and I'm going to support them in that effort. There's a state requirement that CTE be provided for these children, and every student will have a personal graduation plan. Once we identify the children and develop a personalized graduation plan, that will drive our CTE requirements. Those courses will be provided either on site, or we will provide transportation to get those children to the CTE high school. So the next slide is just a progress summary slide. We've had lots of conversations with Norfolk Public Schools officials, and we have discussed the curriculum program elements and the co-curricular activities that will support it. We have state-level cooperation. We continue to talk with Magic Johnson, and we have identified our tasks, and our benchmarks and our milestones will be developed once our program committees begin to meet. And we're all ready to work. We're ready to get the school open, hopefully by July. And we intend to stay on schedule. So the data analysis for this particular Strategy 4 Action Plan 37 is, we've got 6 action steps. We are 75% complete. We are well on the way. There are 2 steps that are underway and will be finalized at the conclusion of the committee's work, because the committee's work represents the final 25% of what we have to do, and it will be an ongoing project. So questions?
I do have a question, and that is, I guess a statement first and a question. And that is, our middle school principals and our high school principals are very interested, obviously, in the success of this, because this will enable some of their students to go to the next level, overage for grade, et cetera, as you've described. Have we sat down with them as a group collectively and provided a very strong briefing of what this is, what this means for their schools, what kind of students that they could look for us, so that they know this program in full and can speak to it from their environment?
I have 2 answers for you. The first answer is yes, we have, through Dr. Charbonnet and John Coleman. And the second answer to that is that will be the responsibility of their committee, and I will join them, and we will have lots of meetings with them prior to identifying students. And the process by which we identify students will be determined, and then we will be talking with them in greater detail.
And will we work with them on developing the process of how we will identify those students?
We will work with them, and we will work with the graduation coaches at the high school also. So middle school and high school staff will be engaged as a part of the committee work.
Okay, I just do feel strongly that they're at the table when we're trying to decide the process, because it involves children in their schools. And they
Does.
want to know, of my school children, who is eligible? And can they all go? Or are there slots? Or is there enough room? What's the capacity?
Right.
What's the eligibility? What's the criteria? All of it. And I just think it's important that they're all well-versed and can speak to it as experts to the community, as well as something that they need to know in their professional position.
That's a very good point, and we do intend to remain transparent as we proceed. Yes.
Thank you.
That is true. But of course, as with anything, there are parameters. And the committees will have to establish criteria as it relates to the number of seats. Because we have more students that really qualify and can benefit from this program than we will have seats. And so, as Dr. Simmons mentioned, principals will be at the table. However, it will be all inclusive in terms of kind of fine-tuning that criteria so that we have various priority caseloads, because we will have limited seats. For example, we know that more than likely at the high school level, it's going to be pretty clean cut and clear cut as to the first round of folk that will be able to take advantage. And we're probably talking those students that I think we talked about when we ran the numbers, 5 credits behind. 5 more credits behind is where we will have to start. And then when you run the caseload at all 5 high schools, you have X number. And then so principals, all of the individuals that Dr. Simmons just mentioned would have to be at the table. They would see that caseload, and then we would have to go through and do the priority process and probably a lottery. After we determine the priority caseload, then run a lottery to determine who gets in and who does not, and then create a waiting list. So yes.
So I'd like to add to that, one of the key performance indicators would be how we improve the graduation index for the district. So all of that is going to have to be factored in. We have far more students that we need to serve than we can accommodate.
Any other questions?
Just on the Magic Johnson and the wireless piece, are you saying that they're responsible for all the equipment, the bandwidth and everything, or just providing the equipment in the building for the?
They're responsible for bandwidth and equipment, both.
Dr. Stewart?
Implicit or explicit in what you said from the Department of Education, I thought I heard you say that more time for this open campus initiative is something that they will support without us required to go through a waiver process?
Yes.
That was either explicit or, again, to our May planning session for master planning, we're going to need more time for the whole system. And I'm looking forward to us discussing how we go about getting that more time for all students, particularly high poverty students. But that's very good news, that implicit or explicit, that they know more time is necessary. We all know it's more necessary for all our kids.
Yeah, I think we're in a very good position as it relates to open campus, hopefully, as it relates to the notion of more time, additional time. The notion of traditional schools outside of open campus and more time becomes a bit more complicated because time becomes money. And so as we begin to move forward, we're going to have to quantify by levels what that means. For example, we talked about doing a balanced calendar where 180 days could possibly remain 180 days, but you push the days back and you start earlier, which gives you more time prior to high-stakes testing, or does it mean additional days beyond 180? So, you know, as you look at those things, it has implications for that, but you're absolutely right. That's something that we have to continue to have on the table looking forward into next year and beyond.
I'm just
Yeah,
interested in us
next to the
having that conversation and hearing
Absolutely.
all the possibilities of, because we all know more time is what high-poverty students need.
I would like to add from a governmental affairs perspective that I have spent a lot of time with senators and local legislators that have a great interest, a vested interest in Norfolk, and they support the notion of helping to do whatever they need to do legislatively to support us. And I'm very comfortable saying that on camera because that's what they've said to me.
One tried real hard this past session.
I have two questions. How does the lack of a state budget affect the timeline for the open campus?
I would like to defer to Dr. King.
You know, I think what we're looking at here will be pending, now that we've approved our first leg of budget here locally, now going to the next step with our local government here. I think that that's what's driving this piece, because we factored, what we wanted to do during this first year was to build in an amount that would ensure that we would be fine the first year. And so going forward, we were looking at innovative grants, et cetera, so that we can move that cost off the operating budget. So I think that beyond this fiscal year, then the state could have some implications from a funding standpoint. So I would like to think that we'd be okay if we were going to get our budget approved.
My question was is that we can't have our budget approved because the city can't have their budget approved until they get a state budget.
True.
And that's my question, is if you're going to sign contracts and you're going to put all these committees together, how does the lack of a state budget affect your timeline?
And we will adjust our timeline. We don't have to adjust the committee work, though,
Okay.
because we're going to have to keep our committees going. But as I indicated with the contract, we are prepared to adjust that.
Okay. I just don't want us to get into a situation when we start recruiting kids and we don't have a budget for this.
No, we'll just meet and establish the criteria to make sure we're clear and are in agreement with regard to which students will be able to come. I'd like to add, too, that next fiscal year, dropout students bring in additional revenue. That's new money. So we'll look at what we can raise this fiscal year. We might need to make an adjustment about which kinds of students we allow in. The Magic Johnson program is really targeted for a dropout population. And so what we're doing is something they've never done before. It's not been done in the state. So we're treading new waters. And we might have to make an adjustment next year if it becomes a budgetary issue.
And the next question I have is dovetailed with Dr. Stewart's implicit versus explicit. Are we expecting to get explicit approval for moving this campus forward without having to go through going before the state board?
Two answers. One, because it's a program, we really do not have to seek approval. It's a program, and so the waivers don't have to be approved by the state board. But two, I was assured by the state superintendent following our meeting that she was going to put every effort forward to make sure that we got their blessings.
To me, that just sounds like a definite maybe. Doesn't sound like you.
It's a strong maybe.
And I learned a long time ago, yes means yes and everything else means no. So until you get that yes, keep fighting.
I will say it's coming. We will.
All right. Any other questions for Dr. Simmons and operations? Well done. We are 4 minutes past our allotted time. So what we need to do is I have to get a consensus from the board is, are you willing and able to continue on to receive the rest of the reports?
6:30, so if we can get through.
I can continue on. I just need 30 seconds. I'll be right back.
I need the same 30 seconds, unfortunately. Can you guys hang with it? Give us 2 minutes and we'll continue on. All right.